nightmare on the national news, and the person
Yes.
who ordered the evacuation, where he sits now? The person who did not plan any of this and who caused a lot of the chaos. Guess where that guy is sitting right now?
I hope not in the EPA or.
Well, you're not far off.
FEMA.
He's the Secretary of Energy for the United States.
Yeah.
Yep, good old Rick Perry. He's the one that ordered it and caused chaos. And no gasoline, cars deserted everywhere. The highways, an absolute disaster. No planning, failure to plan, and trying to evacuate 6 million plus people in Metro Houston. Absolute nightmare.
Can't be done,
anyway,
particularly when you have cars with 1 or 2 people in them, and
yes, exactly.
And, So even that, there's no plan. As far as I'm concerned, if we have to get on the road and head north, the law ought to be at every entrance, stipulating that every car has got to be filled with 4 or whatever it holds, with no one passenger or 2 passengers.
Have pre-positioned gasoline. Exactly, and that's what killed them in Texas. Literally killed the people because they couldn't get out of the way. The cars stalled. They didn't have gasoline. The gasoline was no gasoline to be had. The stations were all sold out. Lack of planning. They knew the hurricane was coming. What were they doing?
The other thing that worries me. I purposely, when I moved to Florida, thinking I knew it all as a geologist, I decided that to be safe, I need to avoid a hurricane tidal surge. So I chose a house that's well east of Highway 301 in Sarasota. And I don't think a tidal surge can get to me here, but now I know that I'm in greater danger than I am risk-wise than I would be from a tidal surge, because I don't think there's any place in the state of Florida that's safe because of our low elevation, and again, malfeasance with our various levels of government in the state. The infrastructure for stormwater drainage is vintage 50s and 60s, which means that stormwater drains are designed, engineered to handle a 25-year storm. And depending on who you talk to, and I've talked to several folks in the Manatee County Utilities Department, some of them told me they only handle 4 inches of rain in 24 hours, and others say 8 inches. But regardless of what that number is, it's too low, because in Manatee County, in late August of 2017, we had what the county lovingly calls the no-name storm. And it was just a small, relatively small, tropical depression that spun a few tens of miles offshore west of Bradenton. And it dumped 3 miles west of where I live, along the bay, 20-plus inches of rain. And there were houses in that area, and I don't know exactly how many, but I'm sure it was hundreds, where the water rose up to right under the rooftops. And these were houses at 16, 17 feet elevation. And that's primarily because there's been no planning to increase the capacity of stormwater sewage. All the retention ponds, even in new developments, unless you've got a really good developer who's going to do the right thing, most of the retention ponds are constructed to handle that 25-year rain event. And in Manatee County, in the last 3 years, we've had 15 25-year rain events.
That seems like the math may be off somewhere in the planning.
So they need to redefine the weather events. And, I mean, you only have to look at the evening news for the last year. I mean, last month there were 3 weeks with 500 tornadoes of greater strength than normal, flooding almost every evening on the national news. Saw flooding last night on the news in Connecticut, where water was up to bumpers on vehicles. And so that's probably the worst effect of the sea level rise. It takes so long, unless you live on a barrier island, you're going to lose your investment, or your grandchildren will, whoever ends up owning it at the time. they go underwater. But all of us, or many of us, at random times are going to be impacted by inadequate stormwater treatment. And our houses are going to be flooded. And when I lived in the New Orleans area many years ago, I helped when the flood insurance first came out, federally funded or backed flood insurance. It was $25 a year. And I had many associates and friends whose homes flooded every year when a cold front would move southward from the Midwest and stall over New Orleans, and they'd get 12, 15 inches of rain. And New Orleans has a unique situation, quite different than ours. They're at or below sea level in most parts of the New Orleans area, and they rely on canals that pump water into Lake Pontchartrain. And those pumps are 100 years or more. They're huge, the biggest houses, and they can handle a great volume of water, but they're old, and they sometimes fail when you don't want them to fail, and they also can't exceed the capacity they were engineered for. So you get a 15, 20-inch rain in New Orleans, there's flooding someplace every winter and spring. And that's what's going to be happening in Florida as we move forward in time. There's going to be a lot of wet carpets and furniture, and having seen this close in person, helped my friends clean out a flooded house, it's a whole lot of work, and you don't want to be as old as I am attempting to do that.
No, it's and I've seen a lot of that myself too. I lived through several floods when I was in Houston, and it was a disaster. Of course, I wasn't there when they had Harvey. I still have family there though, and it was a nightmare for the whole city practically. Harvey
was awful. Yeah, that was 50, 60 inches of rain, and God forbid, all of Bradenton and most of Sarasota would probably be underwater if we had a 50-inch rain dumped on us in 2 days.
Yep, and they've had several of those freak storms. I was there in one of the other ones they had. I can't remember, what was that? Elisa, remember, I think what the name was. And anyway, it's like what happened over in New Orleans. A storm moved in and stalled over the city and dumped anywhere between 20 and 30, 35 inches of rain over a period of just a couple of days and flooded the whole city. I can't remember what year that was in now, but it did enormous damage to the city. It took years to recover. Some of the medical experiments, because it flooded the underground, the huge medical center there, it flooded the underground laboratories and stuff, and they lost a lot of experiments there. I know that, and that was some things you don't stick in your mind. You don't forget. That morning I woke up and looked out from the 24th floor of my high-rise overlooking the city, and seeing the city covered in water, actually covered in water, and emergency helicopters evacuating patients from the Texas Medical Center everywhere. Unbelievable. But that's what Florida looks like we're going to be in for. And the sad thing is, I don't understand this, and we can talk a little bit about this. Why is climate change a political issue? Why is it? Do you have any idea?
No, I've never figured that out myself, unless they know or think they know that, we're going to have to spend a lot of tax dollars on improving infrastructure. We got to figure out how we can at least temporarily save coastal structures, most of which are owned by the same political idiots that occupy the offices that are involved in the malfeasance. It's killing us. It may be that they realize, hey, we're going to have to pay more taxes, or pay taxes to start with, because I don't see any reasonable reason why anyone would want to deny it. In the short time I've been here, which is not quite 6 years yet, I've seen the beach diminished by 50%.
Yep.
Of course, we keep replenishing the sand, but it's really a waste of dollars. I mean, barrier islands are temporary in terms of geologic time, very temporary features. And as the sea level comes up and all the coastal properties get inundated in the Sarasota area, the next barrier islands will probably be along Highway 301 or where the Sarasota Bradenton Airport is.
Listen, Mike, we have to wrap up here. We have less than a minute. Give me your final thoughts here, what you want people to take away. Maybe we can have you back in the future again to talk more about this, because I know there's other things we wanted to get through we didn't cut through. But give me some closing thoughts here real quick.
Well, I'm optimistic as a scientist that the challenges we face with climate change, we can mitigate most of them, if not all of them, or deal with them in some fashion. But to do that, we have to elect officials that are willing to believe that it's a problem and work on it. I mean, we have a governor now. Someone must have whispered in his ear and said, this red tide's a real problem. So he's throwing money. He just threw $18 million towards Moat Ranch, or not Moat Ranch, but Moat Marine yesterday. And so I'm not sure that's well spent money.
Hope it's not too little too late. Let's hope it does something positive.
But I think the part of the solution is the American and Florida voter has to start voting blue if they want to get some honorable people who understand the problem and who are willing to contend with it. I mean, there are 15 states now, most of them blue states, that are aggressively pursuing clean energy and other things that mitigate climate change, and they're going to leave Florida behind in the dust, and that means jobs will leave Florida and go to those states.
Exactly.
People will move to those states, and we're on a path that will make us economically the equivalent of West Virginia in the southeast U.S., and we don't want to be there, I tell you.
No, we do not. We don't want to be depending on coal as our future. And oh, Lord, we could spend an hour talking about that. Okay, listen, Mike, thank you so much. I really appreciate having you, and look to have you back again possibly in the future, okay? Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great weekend.